It knocked on your door. It peeled back your shower curtain way back in mid-May, and it scared the living daylights out of you. And it hasn't stopped doing that even after a 10-3 start. Good afternoon to you. Good Tuesday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the new Double Shot Show. It is not the end of the world, this portion of the schedule that's coming up that has all kinds of names. It's the gauntlet. It's the, I don't know, it's the boogeyman in your life or something. I don't know. But this was supposed to be the ruination of the season. In fact, it was supposed to be so scary as to discourage the team, like to make them realize that the entire rest of the schedule was just going to be a waste of time. And it's just not that. It's never been that. I'm not saying they're going to win all three games. I'm not saying they're going to lose all three games. I'm saying that the schedule impact on that is not going to be significant, and not just because of where the team is standing right now. Listen, please listen to the way Mike Tomlin handled a couple questions on that count today at his press conference.
Mike, you're getting set to kick off 3 games in 11 days. How do you kind of approach what's to come here?
I'm really just focused on Philadelphia. I don't care what's on the other side of it.
Does it affect your approach to practice workload, division of labor, things like that, knowing that there's this is the start to a stretch like that?
It may affect it on the other side of Philadelphia, but I have a 7-day cycle this week, and so I'm not going to make the simple complex. We got a task this week. We got a job to do. We got a finite amount of time and materials and talent and manpower, as do they. And so with that in mind, we're going to prepare and focus our energies on winning this game. There's so many variables that could affect the preparation process on the other side of this game, the attrition component and so forth, that it's fruitless and almost a waste of time to get beyond the template component. Certainly I have a calendar and a template, but that does not have my time or attention. The Philadelphia Eagles do.
Okay, now my favorite part of the way he handled this, because I hadn't thought of this myself, but it kind of makes sense. It's that the Philadelphia game never needed to be lumped in with all the rest of this. The reason that everyone did that is because, they're the Eagles, and oh my, the Steelers haven't won there since 1965, as if that's a relevant thing, as if that's an actual factor. You know, how somebody did 50 years ago in that same city. But here we are right now in Eagles week. And as you heard the man say, he doesn't have to do a single thing differently to prepare for the trip to Philadelphia. Yesterday was a player's day off, Victory Monday. He's been doing that quite a bit lately. That wasn't an adjustment. Today was the day he does his press conference. Tomorrow is the first practice of Philadelphia week. Then there's Thursday with the coordinators, Friday, and then there's Saturday is the walkthrough, and they fly out to Philly and whatever else. And it's just an NFL regular old week. The following week, they head down to Baltimore. That's also a short week, okay? But it's short by 1 day. And if it was sitting there on the schedule by itself, nobody would say a thing about it. Now, can he make an adjustment there? Sure, absolutely. Can he give them, I don't know, an extra day off, practice or something? Yeah, he kind of has to, because it's a Saturday game. So that means Friday they won't practice. Friday will just be their walkthrough. They can also have a Victory Monday. You see where I'm going here? So all we're really talking about here, the entire discussion, is about the ridiculous Christmas game against the Chiefs. That's it. The 1 o'clock, that's a 1 o'clock kickoff on Christmas. You know how rotten that is? Okay, that's all this should have been about. And even then, when the Steelers play a Thursday night game, nobody says anything. This one happens to be a Wednesday. But they do get the extra day in advance of that because the Baltimore game is on a Saturday. You see where I'm going here? It's like the Steelers have had, for about a half a decade now, not an ideal segment of their franchise's history. Ben Roethlisberger retiring, the slow retirement, the terrible coordinators, the terrible quarterbacks. And then this comes along and you see that schedule. all those months ago, and you go, that's it. There's no way around that. And now, even now that you've seen that this team can handle a lot of different adversity, a lot of different directions, everyone's still getting hung up on the schedule. Why? Because they already did it once a few months ago. Let it go. Let it go. If they're going to lose all 3 of these games, or 2 out of 3, or whatever it is, it's going to be because they're facing good football teams. It's not going to be because of 3 games in 11 days. It's just not. Most of these teams, if you look at the schedule, they have the same type of challenges, the same logistics, the same everything. And if anything, the Chiefs have to travel out here, and they have to make room for the Taylor Swift entourage and other stuff that other teams don't have to deal with. When we come back, going to be joined by Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Joined now by Chris Halleck. And before we get to the actual football stuff, between segments here, was joined by somebody who came across the street from where the band Kansas is staying. They are closing their 50th anniversary tour here in downtown Pittsburgh, the same place where they opened their 50th anniversary tour a year ago. They've always felt indebted to the city for being great to them. He brought me, this is actually autographed, Chris, by like every member of the band.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Like, I wish I were there right now.
So the coolest thing, I know you do, so is the band's manager. So I'm thinking, I'm telling him about when you and I were driving to Cleveland and we were having this big, long debate about what like legitimate great rock bands are not in the Rock Hall. Yeah. Okay. And you were the one that you said, Kansas. You're looking at this, you go, Kansas. And I go, Kansas, get out of here. Update your list. There's no way Kansas isn't in.
Carry on my wayward.
Carry on our wayward.
That alone. That alone. But yes.
Dust in the Wind ought to get you in. The guy said that the acoustic guitar from Dust in the Wind, which is one of the great acoustic guitar riffs of all time in any genre, is in. But you put the guitar in, but you don't put the... How? It's such a bad list. It's such a bad Hall of Fame. It's exactly what you would put in Cleveland, you know?
I was going to say, are we done? I think we're done talking about Cleveland, but here we are still somehow.
No, man, we're still talking about Cleveland.
It's awesome.
The football component of this segment goes back to something that you brought up today with Mike Tomlin. There's a 13-game. Well, they've played 13 games, and in none of those games have the Steelers scored on the opening drive. And that's not okay. And by scored, I mean scoring a touchdown.
Yeah.
You can do that for a little while, and it's kind of fluky because you'll get some on a second drive or whatever. But, Chris, is it even about the opening drive, or is it just about the opening quarter? Because you don't see them get unwound until about the second quarter at the earliest.
Well, Mike Tomlin mentioned it not only opening, when I asked him about it, he didn't just mention opening drive. He also mentioned opening 15 minutes. But the one thing that the way he put it, and it really is indicative of the way Mike Tomlin has coached his team over the years. And it actually kind of makes sense. And I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing in the world either. And we can obviously debate that. Is that his focus, and he even said that in terms of their growth and development as a team, from the time that they start installing the offense and the defense in the offseason and go through training camp and preseason, that they focus a lot of attention on the latter portions of the game, on the final 15 minutes, on what could be the last possession, because those typically tend to be more critical than the opening drive or the opening.
Deciding. He's a big believer in that, more so than most coaches or managers in other sports. He really just sees everything as coming down to the end. Yeah. And remember, what game was it this year where he actually really downplayed how far behind the Steelers got? It might have been Indianapolis, where he was like, that doesn't matter. What matters is how you finish. It's like, Okay. Does it though? The whole thing matters.
Yeah, you can't get into a 17-point hole, obviously. And I think that's whenever you have to make adjustments quicker. And I think that's one area where Mike Tomlin and his coaching staff still needs to improve, because you didn't see those adjustments until way later, because I think that game was like 17-3 at halftime. And to climb out of a hole like that is a big ask for any team in the NFL nowadays. That being,
I just go ahead, Chris.
I would
Finish.
say, that being said, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the way that they are playing right now. They are winning a lot of one-score games. In fact, they're winning just about every one-score game.
All of them, even against the Panthers. And
it's one thing to be. A lot of people will call that luck. Luck is if it happens once or twice, maybe 3 times. To happen every single game, that in and of itself, just looking at the way they beat the Chargers, they got the ball with 4 minutes to go, and they didn't give them the ball back.
I give them the ball back.
That is closing out a game, and that is because it is coached up that way. They focus on those closing the games, and so when I hear Mike Tomlin answer that they focus on those same things, you want to see them close games better, but it's hard to argue with the results in the second half too.
Well, it's actually, if you want a more closer to home parallel, it's like what the Steelers were doing when they started out 11-0 in the COVID year. They would just kind of hang around long enough and then tell Ben, go ahead and win us the game. Right. And Ben it wouldn't be fourth quarter. It would be like the end, the final drive. Ben would be like, really? Got to do this again? All right, everybody, 2 minutes. Here we go. 2 minutes comes. He can call the plays. He doesn't have to worry about the world's worst coordinator doing that. And he can just run down the field and make things happen. I see an offense that has issues early on, in large part, at the risk of oversimplifying this, is that they are so determined to run up the rushing count. They're so determined to eat up possession time that they won't even try something else to spread the defense out a little bit, to create more room for their offensive line, for their running backs. And I really wish they'd have just one game, Chris, just one, where they say, you know what, we're not going to do that this time. We're just not going to do that this time.
Yeah, and the best time to do that would be ideally in the playoffs. But this right now,
the whole element of shock and awe. Yeah,
but it's a 4-game stretch right now in which they aren't just fighting for, man, like they could clinch a playoff spot if they win on Sunday, or they will clinch a playoff spot if they win on Sunday. They could clinch the AFC North if they just beat Baltimore, but you don't want to limp into the playoffs and lose the last 3 or 4 games. And the one game you won ended up being the one that mattered, but it doesn't matter. You don't want to limp into the playoffs. You want to fight for good seeding. You want to make sure that if you can control it, that when you face the Bills in the playoffs, they have to go to your stadium, and you don't have to go up to Orchard Park. That stuff matters too. And the best way to do that is to start playing a complete game. And they do have to do that. And because once you see what they start doing in the second half, that opening drive of the second half was masterclass play calling by Arthur Smith. And you
talking about just Sunday against the Browns.
Yes.
It was really, really nice.
And you just want to see stuff like that happen earlier in the game. Doesn't necessarily have to be on that opening drive, but maybe in that first quarter, maybe that second drive, or anything like that, to help get a 7-0 lead, or a 10-3 lead, whatever it is, so that you can get out ahead, make the other team one-dimensional, or make them make adjustments quicker.
I feel like we'd be remiss, though, if we didn't share the stuff that and I know you know about it, because we've had the same conversations with the same people, that we hear from Arthur Smith and from others about this whole symbiosis that the Steelers have about time of possession. Everyone else is free to look at that as some sort of, off to the side stat. They don't see it that way. They don't want the other team's offense out there a lot in the first half. They see that as a big deal. Cam Hayward brought it up the other day. That kind of threw me that he brought it up. Okay. Because they're not out there getting excessively spent in the first half, the way they were, remember, last year. That was a really big problem, was the defense would get worn down. They'd look okay in the first half. The second half, they got nothing left. They're on their 75th, 78th snap of the game, and the teams are just trampling them. So they take this part seriously. What I just like to see is some more, and I think this is what you're getting at too, Chris, here, some more setting up for successful runs. They don't have to be crappy runs. They don't have to be kill the clock runs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that first run, that Najee's first run of the game, was a perfect example. It was a concept called crunch, which literally takes advantage of a team's over aggressiveness to stop the run, because you will have aggressive defensive linemen. That's exactly what happened. It opened up the hole. Najee hit it, and he gains 20 yards. Now, I'm not saying run that concept every single time, because, well, you want to be, unpredictable. You don't want to be running literally the same play over and over again. Right. But at the same time, like, figure out different, like the RPO stuff that we were seeing in the second half. Find different ways to take advantage of that over aggressive nature. But I think the way Arthur Smith thinks the game, and I really saw it on that drive in the first drive of the second half, is that he will have those plays in which he goes, you know what? I'm going to show them that we're going to run the ball. And I don't care if we gain 1 yard or if we gain no yards or anything. I'm going to make them think that every time that we're in a formation that looks like we're going to run. And then there's different ways to take advantage of that. And like I said, we've seen it work in the second half. You'd like to see it try to work a little bit more often in the first half so they can get out to leads a little quicker.
When we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Time now for today's J1Q, and for that we go to Damon down in Georgia.
This is Damon Brown from Augusta, Georgia. It's currently the third quarter right now. Freiermuth just scored. And DK, I'm just curious, what do you think of Freiermuth's usage this week? Thanks.
Gotta love the live J1Q. Like, he's thinking of a J1Q while the game is going on. Freiermuth just scored live from Damon's living room. What I think of Pat's usage, Damon, is it's nowhere near enough, because you would look at that play and you remember that play because it's a big one. Pat also had a big first down conversion earlier in that half, and you go, wow, that's great. Good job, Pat. Way to go, Arthur Smith, getting him involved. And you look at the sheet at the end of the game and you see that he get 3 targets and he caught all 3 of them. And then you look over his last 5 games and you see that he's been targeted 19 times. That's it. 19 times in 5 games. And he's caught 18 of those. That is an outrageous ratio, regardless of your position. And he just can't seem to do anything to get the ball. George Pickens was out of the lineup. He still couldn't get the ball. No other tight ends made a catch in this game. There wasn't any of that, the Darnell Washington, Michael Pruitt, Connor Hayward stuff. It was just Pat. But he was only targeted 3 times. I know I bring this up a lot. And I know that I really don't have a whole lot new to add to the subject. But that doesn't mean that it's less relevant and shouldn't be pumped up really all that much more. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. And now in this environment where you don't have George, you need to be moving the sticks. You're probably not going to be getting as much of the big splash, certainly not against these better teams that the Steelers are about to be facing. And you've got to find a way to create some rhythm. I am here to tell you right now, the Eagles are not going to let the Steelers run on them. Okay, you can wish for it, you can hope for it, and if you're Smith, you can scheme for it, and it's not going to matter. It's it's not going to be as simple as we're going to show them we're the Steelers. We're going to knock them down like bowling pins. You're not. You're not. The Eagles just aren't built like that. Ask Andy Weidel, since he helped build them. You're not going to be able to do that. So what has to happen here? You're going to have to find other ways around them, and you're going to have to, I guess, just be forced with no other choice but to throw to a guy who only catches everything. So maybe that's not the way you thought that answer was going to go, Demond, at the time that you asked it, but there it is. I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody who checks out the new Double Shot. We're going to have another one of these tomorrow.